Yes, so I work here at the university now, actually teaching the lecturers about teaching and creative learning. But I ran a photography department at the University of Hertfordshire, so I'm very used to working with photography students. But of course, you're not photography students; you're international development students. So I'm kind of approaching this from that position that even though everybody's now got a lot of experience of taking photographs, you know, even if it's for, you know, Facebook and certain platforms, and we use our cameras for video and things like that. We've all got a bit of experience of using kind of images for visual culture and things like that. But I'm just mindful that you're doing an academic degree. Most of your experience is probably writing about international development. So in actual fact, you're kind of probably more in the position of being writers than video makers. I think it's really positive to actually be able to use video and film, and particularly for your area, you know, that you could be out there working with communities or whatever, and you can actually pick up and take a record and have some evidence. And so I think it's a great skill to have. So I was thinking about, as you all know, there's kind of differences within video and filmmaking. It's complicated. Most of us experience watching Hollywood movies, so we experience kind of quite binary storytelling. You know, there's always a love story, or there's a trauma, or, you know, there's a kind of, they're very sort of storytelling type films, Hollywood movies. But you're probably also aware that artists make video, and it's about picture making rather than story making. But if you were to make a more kind of formal video, which I think probably is the best way to start in your case, that often you'd start with a storyboard. You'd start by thinking, what is this thing going to be about? So you're starting from the position, in a sense, that you've got to write, or you've got to draw a mini tiny script for your video. You've got to have a decision made by your teams. What's this thing going to be about? How are you going to communicate it? So I was just finding some really basic things. I remember, how many of you have done a storyboard before? Have you done one in school or something like that? Yeah, you're kind of probably aware of it, aren't you? That in a school situation, I remember even when we were in primary school, we made a tiny little film about two hedgehogs. So it was a matter, you know, of literally, you know, that thing of, you're going to stand over there in the corner and somebody's going to run through the room and somebody's going to do this, and then they're going to lie on the floor, and it's that sort of thing of what action is going to happen. And then I remember with the hedgehog film, you know, we were moving the hedgehogs around. We were saying, right, it's going to be in this distance and that kind of thing. So the most sort of, I suppose, the most fundamental storyboard are like literally figures or abstract shapes or something like that. And I've got these to pass round so you can have a look at. What I was thinking, because I was thinking in terms of, I mean, somebody might, is anybody into drawing? Do you like, anybody into actually drawing? Quite like it as a thing? Not particularly. But I suppose I've got to assume that you're not coming from a position where you can draw. Some of you can, but you're coming from a position where you're just trying to make an image of a thought. So I've got an example of a storyboard from a filmmaker called Dictina Hood, who's a friend of mine. Her feature film was called Wreckers, with Benedict Cumberland in it, and she's a writer, so she's a script writer. So I've got an example of one of her storyboards, because it's like saying she's not from a visual background, she's a filmmaker, but she's the director of a film. So I've got some examples, because the idea is that in a minute you're going to make a storyboard together, okay? I've got an information sheet on when you take the camera outside. So the idea this morning is that you're going to do a storyboard, and then you're going to go outside with the camera and you're going to take some shots. So it's that thing of, I mean, you know this really, but you make a decision. There's some pictures here. You know, is somebody in the distance? Is somebody close to you? Are you doing an interview with somebody? You're going to go outside and interview each other. Are you going to interview some other students? Are you going to be standing against the brutalist buildings of the campus? Or are you going to be climbing a tree or lying in the grass? Or what can you know, today you've got the resource of the campus. What's on campus that might be useful to film? Would you prefer to go into the canteen and film some food, or go into the shop, or go into the Students' Union and find some students to talk to? You know, there's a certain amount of things, as you know, on campus that you can use as a resource. So all you've got this morning is the campus and each other to actually draw up some kind of storyboard, really. So I've got examples, I've got some hints and tips about how to use the camera, you know, how you can think about filming shots, just very basic things at the moment. Some of you've got more experience than this, I realise that. But just so that you've at least all got one handout, so you can think about some basic things about how to make a very, very quick video this morning, and then you'll have some footage to come back and video, really. Okay. So just a really quick idea. In a sense, all we're asking you to do is to go through the process of what are you going to do when you go outside? You know, what can you think of doing? Now, it's a really, really dull day today. There's hardly any light. So in some ways, it might be worth using the fact that it's very grey today. So there might not be any happy endings in your film today, because it's very grey out there. You might want to be inside because it's so grey, because you've got no nice sunlight to look at or to play with your cameras, or, you know, the lighting is very, very flat today. So your story might even be, you know, go with that. The actual kind of concrete of the campus looks really, really dark and gloomy today. So we might end up with like a load of gloomy stories. But so think quickly, draw quickly what your story might be, and then it is all very kind of quick work this morning, isn't it? It's like literally just to go through the experience of it. Yeah, it's a practical practice run of just going through the process and using the equipment, isn't it, really? Yeah. And of course realising that most of you, your strengths are more about knowing your subject deeply rather than necessarily being visual communicators. But just communicate in whatever means. You know, there's a lot you can do in the editing process. I mean, a lot of people say take the best shots you can, but actually, you know, editing software is amazing now. So there's a lot you can do in the editing process. So, right, shall I put these handouts out? And we've got paper.
So what's your story going to be about?
The journey of a water bottle to the campus.
Interesting, that's a good one.
Someone rubbing their belly.
Yeah, that's a good shot. Just
Which
definitely
what on that one?
We're doing our video about what people have for breakfast this morning.
Okay.
So we're going to do a few shots, like setting the scene in UEA, and then kind of around UEA's eateries, and then we're going to go towards some interviews as to what people actually have for their breakfast.
Okay.
Tommy closer.
Zoom in a little bit. Movement. Are we good to go? Yeah, I mean, we're good to go.
So tell us, what were you filming about?
Okay, so we're going to go film people who use bicycles. So we start off with filming people biking.
It helps us set the
And
scene.
then hopefully we'll get some interviews with someone, ask them a bit about why they choose to cycle to uni and how many times a week. And if they lock their bodies. And then we're going to have a close-up of loads of bicycles. And then we have we kind of have a message on the picture, I think. Some kind of like, either the people lock their bikes or the bikes being stolen. And then we're going to film when we go away to the security lodge. Hopefully we'll ask them some questions, see if there's loads of bikes being stolen, stuff like that. And then the final shot will be maybe some summary, maybe just filming some overview shots of the campus, and then have some information on there depending on the result of that interview.
Good. Great.
Yeah.